That was the only day I ever felt that I did want to exist. But all the other times I never really did want to exist. For what? What reason? I didn't see no purpose. I didn't see no hope. What hope? What is hope? No, that's my truth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are having another very special episode. We are continuing our interview with David Duranian. Did I
Correct.
slaughter that? Duranian. Basically, what we did was we went through Dave's entire life up to a certain point, in particular when he was about to go into the state penitentiary system. And basically, what we're trying to do here is really dig out Dave's entire life, the things he's had to go through, his interaction with the penal system, substance abuse, and really a remarkable, wonderful bounce back about how he's doing now, and he's actually working in the addiction industry. My name is Dr. B. This is Reality Bites with Dr. B. Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing good today. Thank you, Dr. B, for having me here again.
Thank you for coming back. It's awesome that you came back. Like I said, it's been a couple of weeks. I'm going to very rapidly talk about where we're at right now, where we left off. Basically, we went through your whole life. And to sum it up, and please watch the other show, the original episode, to follow up exactly what happened. But to sum it up, Dave basically grew up in Los Angeles, a lot of family strife, social strife, personal strife, and there was crime involved in that. There was a lot of substance abuse involved in that. And we are now at a point, I believe we're talking about 1988, and you're just getting sentenced for a longer stint in state prison.
Correct.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this was for, what is the, if you can share with us, and I know there's some things you don't want to talk about. And before we go any further, I know that after the show we talked and you told me, because I know you well, we worked together. You're our lead counselor at our non-profit program that we are both affiliated with. You talked about that the show brought out a lot of feelings for you.
Correct.
And there was, whether it was negative, positive, but I know it was difficult. Will you speak to that? And then we'll get back into the story and move
Sure,
forward.
I will, Dr. B. So what it brought up for me was I've done a lot of work on myself already in the past, my therapists and my counselors and stuff like that. And so when I had to resurface all that back up, it kind of brought up the child again and started bringing up some sad things, because when I overlooked everything, with my mom struggled with her own alcoholism, and, my relationship with her is totally different today. But back then it was just tough for her, raising all of us by herself, but, at the same time being an alcoholic. But it brought up a lot of feelings for me, just like as a child, because it wasn't really that good memories as a child. I try to base things on positive memories, and I just talked to my mother the other day, and we were just talking about one good positive memory was in Seal Beach when she just got out of jail. It was one day she was sober, and I remember that specifically. In that moment, it meant a lot to me. But there was just, my mom struggled a lot, and I understand her now better. But it just brought up a lot of feelings, just confusion from when I was a kid. I didn't know how to act in society. Didn't know how to just in general be me, be okay with me. It was just a lot of problems, but I think it was good that we did that because I needed to resurface that up a little bit, get a better understanding. It actually helped me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help you work through some stuff out?
It just helped me just to remember a little bit, what I mean? Like, it makes me grateful for where I'm at today.
It's interesting you just said that it made you bring up this memory of your mother. A good day. She got out of jail. She was sober. Well, a lot of people don't know it, and I don't talk about it too often just because of the role I take as a healthcare provider. But, and I feel like I should be invincible, untouchable, and always perfect. And I don't aim to do that in any pretentious way, but
Correct.
I want to be there for my patients, the kids. But what you just said about the day your mother coming out of jail, and it was a positive day. My father died when I was very young, 5 or 6, and there was, and it's even difficult for me to say it on this, but there was a lot of substance abuse, and the days, and I didn't forget my father. I haven't forgotten my father, but I've thought about my father daily probably till the age of 30. Okay, I actually thought about, and and you're always thinking about, well, what if this, what if that? But when I was times that I think about them, I think about the few positive
Correct.
days.
Correct. That's what we lean on. It's healthier that way than to lean on the negative stuff. Because I knew who the true person was in my mom. My mom's actually a beautiful person, but she had a lot of problems. A lot of problems. And her upbringing was different than mine, too. She was adopted, and she went through the foster homes and worked in the cotton fields. She went through a lot of problems in foster homes with sexual abuse, and she told me about it.
So it's sort of this cycle repeating itself. And I think if I had an opportunity to interview 1,000 people like Dave that are just wonderful people, they're intelligent, they're good natured, they have a good moral composition, and these social issues create barriers for our individual growth, and yet you can overcome them in many positive ways. And I think that's what's important here. Let's get back into the story, Dave. I think we were at sentencing and you had just gotten in trouble. Can you just slightly recap and put us back into where we're at?
Sure. And so I was put in LA County Jail, and I had been going back and forth to court, incarceration. I was probably maybe 110 pounds only.
18 years old?
Yeah. I was very skinny, meth use, heavy meth user. I was very tiny. The bottom line is I got in there in the county jail, and I was very scared because of my size and my race. Majority was Latinos and African Americans, and it was just, we were the minorities, and they were just, there was fights every day, constantly having to watch your back. The meals weren't all that, but constantly going back and forth, worrying about the cops beating me up too, because if you just made one little mistake, LA County Jail was different in the 80s. They would smash you with a flashlight, and it happened all the time to the Latinos, African Americans, and Caucasians. There's all of us. So it was a constant fear from the minute I went in there. But it's going back through the Norwalk Court, Superior Courthouse. I remember first time going there, and them telling me how much time I was looking at. But I smelt the years, the fear in the holding cell down. It was like a dungeon. Scared the hell out of me.
Fascinating. So you're going back and forth in court.
Mm-hmm.
You're in county jail, Los Angeles County Jail.
Correct.
It's a pretty difficult place. And you're in a holding cell about to go back into court. There's other folks in the same cell with you.
Correct.
I know you've had a lot of methamphetamine use up to this point, a lot of criminal activity. And what was the years that they told you would be looking at potentially?
I was looking at life.
How did that? This was the first time you actually were told that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think of asking? You're a pretty bright guy, but I know at that age we're in la la land at times. Did you ever think of what the hell's going on? I mean, you are now in the adult criminal system. And what I see is an 18-year-old that basically is looking for nurturing, guidance, male leadership role in his personal life, nurturing role of a mother in his personal life, love, and not in a sexual kind of way, but true platonic love.
Correct.
And all of a sudden, here you are. So you're a child as far as I'm concerned. And here you are in adult jail, and they're telling you all of a sudden you're looking at 100 years and you're in a holding cell. And what do you explain more to me what you mean?
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that, Dr. B, because at that time, you said it right. I was a child at the time. The fact I'd been using meth at a younger age, maturity-wise, I did not grow. I was very immature. I didn't know the rules of the courts. I didn't understand any of this. All I know is when they offered me that much time, I had a breakdown. I pretty much had a breakdown. I was lost. I didn't have no communication skills. I had no social skills. I didn't know how to fend for myself. I just didn't know how what proper decision to make. I had a public defender, but basically he was just not doing much for me. Didn't ask me questions, just said, this is what they're offering you. And I said no, and they made me come back. This went on for a long time, and Finally, I got a state-appointed attorney because of my history. I had a probation. They do like a probation officer hearing thing, and they came and they said he needs a state-appointed attorney. It's not fair. I did get a state-appointed attorney, and he's basically the one, after a year and 2 months, got me that deal.
Year and 2 months, county jail, going back and forth with the public defense. This is that day that they told you, or this is your...
The first day they told me is when they told me how much time I was looking at, and I almost lost it. But they kept staying with the same amount of time until I got the state-appointed attorney.
Now, clarify the difference here. So both of them are dealing with state laws. The public defender at the local jurisdiction, which would be the county. Now you're saying, well, they went ahead and gave me a state-appointed attorney.
Correct.
A state-appointed criminal attorney. What, he's got a little bit more tools. He's a little more heavy-handed. He's got more time to spend on your case. And tell me why they said, hey, you're going to get a state-appointed attorney. Is it because what you were looking at was so heavy?
Correct.
Okay.
Not only that, but my history of being in and out of juvenile halls, placement, incarceration as a juvenile. Not only that, but just my drug history at a young age. But I want to explain something about the state-appointed attorney. It's not so much the state-appointed attorney. It's just that guy. I knew he cared. He really did care, and he was going to be a lawyer himself. He wasn't going to be a DA or anything.
He was going to stay as a lawyer.
Correct. And the thing with the public defenders, majority of the time are going to be the DA. That's what they're working, striving for. It's all in the same system. But I just felt the difference with the state-appointed attorney. He fought, and that's what I liked about him a lot, and I'll never forget him.
Now, I'm going to digress and put in my own interjection here. If I understand it correctly, and you can tell me now as I talk to people now, I ask them, well, why don't you get a public defender? They actually bill you for that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So unless, this could be and I'm going to come back to this, how the whole system is basically built up and to eat us up. My understanding is public appointed defense attorney, if you can't afford one. And these guys are actually, a lot of them are really good guys. Their caseloads are insane. Mm-hmm. They're underpaid. And I thought it was supposed to be public appointed. That means the public pays for it. So what is this thing about you get the bill at the end? And I'm going to come back to this because I think to see the whole enchilada, I'm going to come back to this at some point. Yeah, what is this thing about you getting a bill at the end?
Well, basically, you get the court fees, you get the public defender fee, and when you go inside incarceration. And about 5 years down the line is when they started the new law where they charged you for that. They backtracked on you. And so anytime your family would send you money, they would keep 45% of it towards your restitution for that. So
this has always been the case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if people know that. I think, again, that's kind of insane. And I'm not going to touch too much upon it now, but I think it's something to keep in mind as we build this thesis of a paradigm of we are suffering from a social pathology, and addiction is a symptom of it. And this social pathology, and if you look at the prison system, I think we'll start to see that it leads to isolation, existential angst, and loneliness. And you know what? People that are not happy don't commit suicide. People that don't suffer from these issues do not turn to drugs. People, and I mean that take it with a grain of salt, okay? People that come up whole do not suffer from anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and a whole host of other things that really defines our current culture and generations right now. And I want to get, the whole point here is to build up to that. Dave, tell me how that whole year was. Was it rough in LA County?
It was very rough. But I was sobering up a little bit. I noticed the fact that I looked really young. They put me in a dorm called the Softies because I looked like I was really young for my age. So they put me in basically to protect me for the first year. And it's called Softies, and it was basically at the HOJJ, which is the Hall of Justice jail, the old county jail. You know what I mean? And so I was there with the $1 million bail and the murder roll, but I was segregated from them. So it was a little bit safer. I'm like 110 pounds when I go in, so I mean, it's different, you know. But once I'm in the softy dorm, I'm doing a lot of exercise. I'm actually working out a lot and taking care of myself, self-care.
How are you digesting that you're looking at a long stretch here?
I didn't know how to digest. It was coming out in anger. It was coming out in a lot of anger, a lot of fear. It was just coming out. I wrote a lot of letters to the judge. I wrote a lot of letters to, you know, my family. Just please, someone help me. I was reaching out to people just to help me. I didn't have no outlet to. It was just coming out in anger.
Any visitations were you allowed?
My girlfriend at the time was giving me visitations.
And how often were they?
She would come every 2 weeks to visit me. Yeah.
And not much substance abuse that first year, huh?
No, just once in a while we would make some Pruno. We'd drink in there. It didn't do much because the county jail didn't have that good of Pruno. We didn't have, yeah, but it was just something.
Okay. So tell us about, so you went in, did you go to trial or did you do
I wanted to go to trial. They came at me with a deal, so it was either, if I would have taken it to trial, I would have got life.
You think so?
If I would have been convicted, oh, you definitely. That's the way it's set up. That's how they bargain you. They bargain you by, they want a conviction. So they bargain you with, if you don't take this deal, we're going to give you the life sentence. That's what they do. And so...
Meaning we're going to try to get life if you get a conviction.
If you take it to conviction, they get mad because you're making them work harder. So now the fact that they're going to give you the max no matter what. That's how they do it.
So there's no critical thinking or rational approach in terms of crime and punishment here. You know, what does this guy really deserve? If he's going to waste our time by going to trial, then we're going to try and punish him by getting the maximum sentence. Mm-hmm. So let us try and push him off of that. So there's no really, like I said, there's no moral or ethical component of this calculus as they go through this system.
Correct.
And I'm not trying to blame the individuals, but again, we all suffer from, I think, the system that we're in. So tell us what happened. Yeah, there was a deal, and then go from there, and I'll interject.
So I was sentenced to state prison. Within 2 weeks, I was taken to Tehachapi.
What was the deal, and what?
35.
35 years. Mm-hmm. And how did you digest that?
The fact I didn't have life made a difference.
Really?
Yeah.
35 years, was there, did they tell you you're up for parole in a certain amount of time?
No, they automatically tell you you're going to be doing 3 years of parole once you get out. When you get sentenced, they tell you all the sentencing, basically, this is what's going to happen. This is how much you owe in restitution. You're going to be on 3 years parole, no guns.
No, I meant when are you up for parole?
It's actually depending on how your behavior is while you're in there. So I was supposed to get off parole in 2000.
When you get that 35 years, I mean, did they tell you, hey, in 10 years you can go?
No, it's not. It's only unless you have life. That's when, the parole board does that. It's separate from the courts. The courts has nothing to do with the outcome, the date, or anything. It's when you go in front of the parole board.
So they don't tell you when you get to go in front of parole? What is that? Okay.
No.
Really?
You have to file paperwork to do all that. It's different. It's like you have to go through a protocol once you get into the penitentiary. You have a caseworker in there. It's another pro officer, but basically you have to file. And if you get any 115s, basically you're going to get denied. 115 is like a disciplinary action. Like if you get in a fight or you get caught making alcohol or smoking drugs, whatever.
Okay. So you got that 35 and you said you were just happy that you didn't think that, hey, I'm going to be 55 years old if this thing goes on. But you were just sort of relieved that you are not getting life.
Correct. Not only that, but I was leaving LA County Jail.
And that made you happy because...
Oh, yeah. Because LA County Jail it's tough. It's one of the toughest things to deal with, especially in the 80s. LA County Jail, if you can survive LA County Jail, you can survive anything. Really. Yeah. It wasn't just so much the inmates you had to worry about. It was the officers at the time. It was really bad. This is the same time, like 1992, and I mean, situation with Rodney King. That's the kind of things we dealt with back then. It was different. Times have changed. It's a lot healthier.
Okay. So tell us what happened then. You said you were being shipped upstate or something?
Correct. I went to Tehachapi State Prison.
Okay. For those of you that don't know Tehachapi, it's maybe a couple hours north of Los Angeles. It's
Correct.
Central California. It's, I believe, in Kern County. Is that where it is? Or is it Fresno
No, it's
County?
a little bit farther out past Kern County. Kern County is like Delano.
Okay. All right. So it's a little further out there in Kern County, and it's a state prison, which I actually used to deal with a lot of the inmates that would come in to a hospital that I worked at for many years. So I'm very familiar with that prison system, the parole officers, and many of the inmates that would come in for traumas, overdoses, what they call kites, which would be forms of communication that would be transmitted rectally from one inmate to another. So you got shipped up to Tehachapi. Tell us, take it from there, wherever you want to.
So I get to Tehachapi Prison, and basically it's very political. You got to go with your own race.
Now, do you mind telling us what your actual race is? I don't know if we've touched that.
Yeah, I'm half Armenian, half Irish.
So what kind of a race would you go with when you get up there? Because your own race, what are you going to find? One other guy if you're lucky,
Well,
and I don't.
you're either going to go with the blacks, Mexicans, or whites, or you're going to go with the others. And so I didn't want to choose nothing. I didn't. The Mexicans would come up to me, hey man, we know your brother. Come kick it with us. And I'm good. I fought them every day of my life. No, I'm good. But I eventually just joined the white gang.
Why did you make that choice?
Because stupidity at that time, just stupidity. I had a lot of issues with Latino Americans at that time because they beat me up every day when I was growing up.
Okay. Now tell us about, get a little more myopic in the story here about going upstate, processing. Tell me what that was like. Tell me what was going on. And I'm just curious. And
There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear. But, at that time, I'm not going to tell you there was a lot of fear. I'm holding it all inside. And, when I first get there, first thing I see is this CO looks like Smokey the Bear. He's got a hat on, and and I could smell the earth. And it smelled good because I remember I was locked up in LA County. It smells like dirt the whole time. But I get to Tehachapi. It smells beautiful. It's snowing. And he's smoking a cigarette. I'm like, I am home. That's how I felt at the time. It was better than being in LA County jail. It was dungeon. LA County jail was depressing, very depressing. It smelled like feces, like urine. It was just bad. But to get to Tehachapi was just totally different. But the way the system was designed in prison is just basically move here, 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 here. You keep moving. They constantly move you. Take your CDC picture, which I have E65397. You hold your thing up, and so the little boy just holding a CDC number. It was interesting, but the food was a little bit better. They gave me a cell. You go into reception first for the first 60 days until they place you into the right position for your crimes, your points, and everything. Go by points, how many points you have. Actually, I started having a little bit of fun in there. When I went in there because I was like a follower. And what I mean by a follower is like I just was looking for a male figure. And there's a lot of guys in there that are like 45, 50 years old. I looked up to them. I really did look up to them because they treated me good. Hey, you want some coffee? Here's some care package, some soups. They took me under their wing, kind of protected me. No sexual, nothing like that. It was just... I did whatever they asked me to do. Like, we got into certain fights, we got into certain things. But I just looked at him because I never had a male role model.
You're essentially, your expression after all of this and going into state prison for 35 years, the expression of this young man in prison is the same thing of the last 18 years, which he lacked.
Correct.
And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And if it was there in the first place, would you be in that system? And that's neither here or there, but it's important for the future, I think, for our children, your kids, my kids. So at first you were getting along okay, huh?
Good. I didn't make no problems when I was in prison. you got to remember something. I'm coming off of drugs. I'm starting to feel better about myself a little bit physically, not emotionally, but physically. I'm starting to look a little bit thicker. I'm eating more. I'm off drugs for a while now.
Couple years, huh?
Yeah, I'm starting to look pretty good. I'm getting up to like 125, 30 pounds. I feel confident a little bit more. I feel like I'm a part of something now too. You know what I mean? Like a white gang, and it's part of something now because they're treating me good. Yeah, I had a routine. That's what prison is like. More like you have to have a routine. If you're gonna have that many years, you better have a routine, or you're gonna lose your mind. So I did have a routine. Certain things I would do. I would work out certain time, go to the prison yard. I would go to the school. I would go to the library, stuff like that. But I stayed busy. I stayed busy.
Were those services available? How much self growth services were present at that time and available to you? How much resources, social resources within that system, or was it just the housing system at that time?
It was the housing system. So there was services outside of that, but if you were to attend like church or anything like that, you would be considered like weak. And the reason why, because a lot of people hide behind the church in prison. They call them Bible thumpers, and they hide behind the Bible because they got some stuff they don't want people to know about. So if we were to integrate with them, something's up. So there's rules. We didn't go to church. We didn't go to NA meetings. We didn't go to AA meetings. It was basically, we had a social circle. Each race had its own social circle.
Okay.
And that's just what it was. We made things happen in there, and we ate together. We did things together, and that's what it was. And I felt like it was accepted for once.
Really?
Yeah, I did. Even though it was negative, I still felt accepted.
And you felt safe in some ways.
I did feel safe, but you still had to keep your eye on your.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's a certain sense of safety. At the same time, there's a certain sense of hypervigilance that's 24 hours a day as well.
Correct. Even when you're laying down and sleeping, you always make sure you're stay alert. I'm a heavy sleeper now, but back then, no, I was always on my toes. Lights, because you don't know.
Tell us this. Okay, so that's your first, year, couple of years, 3
Correct.
years? Tell me a significant change. And I understand there are certain things you may not want to talk about.
Yeah, that's fine. So that's fine. So the reality is, every 2 years, that if you get sentenced to a lot of years, every 2 years you get moved to a different prison. And the reason why is so you don't get comfortable. They don't want people to get comfortable because then the gangs start taking over. So they constantly move people every 2 years. And so I went to another prison, had to fit in with them again.
Which prison?
I went to Delano.
Yep.
I went to Delano.
Close by.
Correct. It was right down the street, not far at all. I went to a level 3 yard.
Which means what? Tell us, those that don't know what a level 3 is.
Okay, so level 3 is basically you have 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 4 is people that are doing life or have like hardcore gang affiliation, and they just constantly get into trouble. 3 is, and it's cell living. 3 is cell living too, and it's just people that are doing okay. They're just kind of don't do well in dorms. 2 and 1 is like 2 is basically dorm living. Maybe they have 5 years left. But level 1 is basically like people that are just in there for drug offenses, and 16 months with half, and they're getting out. They're just a turnaround. That's what level 1 is.
So you're on level 3.
Correct.
At Delano.
Correct.
Living cell, one roommate?
Correct. A Romanian cellmate.
How interesting.
Yeah, he scared me because he was in there for murder.
Yeah.
Yeah, he killed his wife and his, he told me everything about it. He was a great guy. Beautiful heart, but he comes from the country, which was a hard struggles. He told me about his struggles over there. He helped me out a lot. He kind of taught me to grow up a little bit. He was just a really good guy.
This is at Delano.
Yes.
Okay, so you got transferred there, and keep going. You tell me. This is your story, and I just interject.
Well, so the prisons was pretty much kind of like a kid play game. It just went on along with the years, just went along and just kept going. There was a lot of incidents where we had like child molesters in there. We would deal with them. There was a few that I dealt with myself.
Okay.
And that's where the anger came out. The anger came out with that. I had no problem raising my hand when I heard someone had hurt a child or a woman. I had no problem hurting him. But that's how I got to relieve my anger out. I look for reasons to do that. But that was, when I look back, that's kind of brought up feelings for me, just my own situation. After a while doing this to a few of them, I started getting a high out of it.
You did?
Yeah.
A little rush?
The adrenaline. I mean, it's one of the best adrenalines you can ever get. That's what scared me. I've been in a lot of prison riots, a lot of riots. I've been in over maybe about 30 riots, constantly getting pepper sprayed. I got in a riot one time where I got jumped by a few guys from Northern California. They beat me with a baseball bat, and that's how I ended up at San Joaquin Hospital in
Yes,
Bakersfield.
close work to where I used to work.
Yeah, my wrist was just snapped in half, but I didn't care. I mean, I was a soldier. I call myself a soldier. I was a soldier. Yeah.
When did did the substance abuse creep back in?
It did creep back in. It creeped back in maybe about 6 years down the line.
At Delano?
Delano, and not only Delano, but all the rest of them after that. Basically, I was doing a lot of smoking pot and doing heroin. And mind you, I never really did heroin before.
Right. So tell me about how that. Is it okay if I ask
that's
about
fine,
how
that's
that
fine.
came in?
So the heroin was pretty heavy inside the penitentiary. The first time I did heroin, I snorted it and had it in a spoon. And I remember the best feeling I ever had. It was a warm sensation.
I want to know about that, but why did you decide to even do it? That, after all, this is about addiction at its heart. So
Correct.
Why did you I know you had a meth history. Had you done cocaine? And
I've done cocaine.
Yeah, you had done it all,
Yeah.
but you hadn't done heroin.
No.
Why did you decide to do heroin in your mid-20s? I mean, I can think of a million reasons, but I want you to tell me why.
Well, the reason why, because I really, deep down inside, I was not comfortable with me. And also, too, is I just wanted to feel, I didn't want to have to feel what I was feeling. I wanted to escape prison. And I wanted to, have to escape. I just still was not comfortable in my own skin. Even though I was physically looking good, there was still a lot of stuff going on, turmoil, undealt, resolved trauma issues inside. So that's why I always look for ways to get high, get drunk, whatever. But when the heroin came, why not? It's right there. Why not? There's multiple reasons why. Maybe my cellie was doing it, and maybe I wanted to do it with him. But I didn't want to have to feel. I still didn't want to feel.
And tell me, you were already telling me about after you did it, you really liked it. You tell me it was.
Oh, yeah. It was the
Tell
greatest.
us.
It was a warming sensation that I had never experienced in my life. And I felt, for once, I was calm and I felt okay. And I was just super laid back. And I was just like, wow, this is awesome. This is a great feeling. Yeah.
Safe? Felt
Yeah.
safe?
Yeah.
Is that an okay word to use? I don't want to put words in your
Correct.
mouth.
That's fine.
Safe?
Yeah.
And I'm going there again because I'm building my own thesis and all of this. There's a well-known sociologist within that world. His name is, I believe, Emile Durkheim. And at the turn of the 20th century, he's a French sociologist, social theory. His claim to fame, if I understand it correctly, one of his claims to fame is that one of the pieces that he did a study of the concept of suicide. And in that book, it's well known, not only did he do a great job at extracting that concept out and spitting it back out for understanding, but it was, I think, one of the first formal analysis of a sociological concept. That means he used statistics in simple terms. The bottom line of that thesis, if I understand it correctly, for the most part, was that when you look at suicide, it's created when there is loneliness and isolation. Okay? It's a manifestation of isolation. And when you look at groups, and again, remember, he's applying statistical models, epidemiological models in their infancy, if I can use that term, to sociology. And then eventually we have the social sciences growth and so on and so on. This is not about that, but just to get the point across. And, his conclusion was really suicide is an expression of loneliness for the individual mind. And when you see it in individuals, groups, or social sectors where that individual isolation and loneliness is growing, and there's a sense of hopelessness and no contact and no human bonds being formed, you have suicide. That's one of the expressions of that. Now, as I develop this idea over the next, hopefully, several episodes, my point is in today's social environment, and another guy, Eric Fromm, writes extensively about this, and many people will know who he is, another social theorist. One of my points about that is that in our current social state and the corporate structure of our society, we are creating more and more social isolation, which pops its head out in multiple diseases that we call anxiety, depression, suicide, and substance abuse. And Dave, here you are telling us that the first time you did heroin, you felt something very different. And I'm trying to push that analogy. And if you disagree with me, let me know. You felt the warmth, you felt the comfort, you
Correct.
felt
I
ease.
felt relaxed. I just felt okay at the moment. So when they look back and they think about it, my life's always been in turmoil. You talk about suicide. Oh, yeah. My life's always I've never wanted to exist. But when I did the heroin, I felt at
Never
peace.
wanted to exist.
Yeah.
What a way to put it. So I want you to take note of how you said that. You didn't say, I want to die.
Sure.
You said, I don't want to exist.
There is a difference.
There's a huge, and it's funny, it's fascinating. You point, it's not that I want to kill myself.
Correct.
You didn't say that. You said, or I wanted to kill myself. You said, I don't want to exist.
Correct.
And that implies so much. And there's that the verbiage in that is so important for someone to see that it means so much. I exist. I want it to be different. I understand the angst of existence, and my extinction is a
Correct.
scary thought. I don't want to kill myself, but I don't want to exist because the existence I'm in right now is not good.
It never was good, except for that day when I went to, my mother got out of jail. That was the only day I ever felt that I did want to exist, but all the other times I never really did want to exist. For what? What reason? I didn't see no purpose. I didn't see no hope. What hope? What is hope? No, that's my truth.
So all the running around, all the excitement, whether it's females, whether it's criminal activity, whether it's drugs, alcohol, the day you wanted to exist, there was no monetary gain. There was no fame. There was no glory. There was no degree, educational degree. The day you wanted to exist is when there was a human bond.
Correct. Correct.
And the day you did heroin for the first time, you felt safe and warm.
And I felt like I could exist at the moment. It was like no anxiety, no. I come from a generation where the anxiety was not even out there. They didn't use the word anxiety.
No, we didn't. I come from the same
And
background.
you were considered weak if you even said something like that. We weren't allowed to express what we felt. We weren't allowed to tear. We weren't allowed to express our emotions. But the reality is, like, I had a lot of anxiety then. Didn't even know it. A lot of trauma. Didn't even know it. I didn't understand it. But when I did that heroin, it was like, I love this. This is what I like. This is for once I feel. Not too many times I feel like existing, but that moment was like, right now it's okay to exist. It's okay to exist now.
It brings to mind, I can't remember his name right now, but there's a French poet, and he talks about heroin, opium actually, the same thing, heroin. And this is not verbatim, but it's something like this. It goes something like, doing opiates is like for one moment getting off of that bullet train towards death, and for one moment not thinking about death, and this is the part, not thinking about life.
Correct.
And you just described that, and you said, well, I don't want to die, but I didn't want to exist. And the one day that existed for you was the day you were with mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day you're describing for me is the day that you did for the first time,
Correct.
heroin.
Correct.
I find that insightful. I find that fascinating. I find that tragic and beautiful because I think there's so much there we can fix as individuals, but more importantly, as a society, as a culture, as a group of people, and yet we don't, and we are heading towards death on that bullet train, making existing meaningless. Please go on. Thank you for sharing that stuff. But please go on. So you did that heroin. Tell me about a little bit about the opiate history from that point on.
Anytime I can get my hands on heroin, I would. We had a lot of heroin in there, so it wasn't like hard to get it. It was real easy to get it. It was heroin was the most common drug that was in there at the time, in the 80s and the 90s in the penitentiary. Meth hadn't even really come out into the penitentiary that much. It was marijuana and heroin, but I'd rather have heroin and alcohol, Pruno. That time I'm making a lot of Pruno too. I mean, the COs are letting me make the Pruno as long as we stayed out of their hair. They didn't mind. But I constantly was using heroin and just constantly just snorted it, and just a great feeling. It was a great feeling, like warm fuzzy. I loved it. I'm smiling right now because it was like the best feeling I ever had.
Did it cost a lot?
Not really. Not because I was involved in the politics. I was up there. So, a lot of times I took the role, a role that I prefer not to talk about.
Sure.
But I had a reputation because a lot of things that I had done, I built in there while I was in there. Mind you, I was 110 pounds originally. I'm getting bigger as I'm getting older.
Several years down the line.
Oh yeah, I'm really like working out every day hard. I'm doing everything. But I have a lot of anger, and people were scared of me a lot. Mm-hmm.
How was your relationship with family? Any family during?
No, my kid's mom, Diane, she talked to me all the time, as much as she could. But I didn't really have a relationship with my mom because she was in fear of her boyfriend, the one that testified against me to go to prison. She didn't want to be in the middle of it, so I really didn't have much contact with my mom or my brothers at the time. Yeah, so
Why not your brothers?
they had their own addiction. My oldest brother, John, was in prison, so was my brother Matthew was in prison. My little brother Gregory at the time was diagnosed schizophrenic.
Two older brothers in prison. You are in prison. Youngest brother, schizophrenic.
Correct. And my mom basically was taking care of him at the time. Before that, he went to jail too. But he was doing meth and he had a psychosis and he never came back from it. And if you remember earlier I said about my stepdad, the one that raised me, was schizophrenic. So it ran in the genes and he got him. It hit him. So, but we had all had our own problems. It wasn't just me. It was my brothers that had that problem too, in and out of prisons and just constantly.
Okay, so we're several years from Delano. Where did you go?
From Delano, I went to Wasco.
Yeah, another prisoner. You were basically in my circle of service.
Right.
I took care of all these guys.
Correct. Yeah. And then I went to Susanville.
I don't know that one.
Went to Pleasant Valley.
I know that one.
I went to Avenal. I went to my last prison I went to, which was CRC, which is in Riverside, somewhere out there in Riverside called Norco.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my last prison I went to, and that's the one where I got locked up for 2 years in the hole.
Will you tell us about that? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. So, like I said, it was up there, and when I got there, I had to prove myself. And
again, you got to do it every time.
Every time. And so I had some guy who was smart mouth than me, beat him up in it's a hotel in California. It's called Hotel of California, and so where we live at, it's like dorm living, and it's all concrete, and so I got the guy slipping and knocked him out and stomped his jaw out, broke his jaw, and 2 days later, ISU came up. ISU is like the special investigators. They're over the COs and everybody. They came up, and my nickname at the time was Sharky, and they came up and they got me. And they knew me.
Can we ask why they called you Sharky?
I just attacked. Didn't care. No questions asked. I was very angry. I attacked. I liked fighting at that time. Oh yeah, I would attack.
And
And
this developed in while you were in prison.
this developed when I was a child too.
Yeah,
It was just
yeah,
survival.
yeah.
This is what it comes down to: is their survival. But they put me in the hole. This was called the shoe program, and I had to spend the next 2 years isolated to myself in a single man cell in Encino called Palm Hall, and I had no books, no nothing, and I was losing my mind. They would bring me to the yard once a week in my boxers. That's all I would get to wear in my cell was just boxers. So I did this for a long time, and then finally someone slipped me a Bible, and I read the Bible 3 times while I was in. That's how bored I was.
Or so you were locked down for 24 hours a day
Correct.
in a small room?
Correct. And it's a tiny old cell. It's like one of those old dungeon cells. But they would come get me, and I'd have to be shackled at all times. Shackled.
No books, huh? Any TV, anything?
No.
So what did you do all day?
I did a lot of burpees. I made
What's burpees? Tell us.
burpees is like where military does it. The military
Yeah.
does Navy SEALs and stuff like that. I started doing those every day. I made dice out of toilet paper, toothpaste. I played like 10,000 game, 10,000. I started getting bars of soaps and I was making I was like, making Bibles out of it. Like, I don't want to say what kind. I had little picks and stuff you're not supposed to have, but I had it hidden. And I just made like certain designs and I loved it. I just stayed creative.
And during that time, you couldn't do any heroin either.
Oh no, not that time.
Did you have withdrawals and problems when you went in?
Not really, because I exercised a lot still.
Did you? Okay. So for 2 years, so this was straight up punishment. Do you think those 2 years in isolation did you any good?
It did me more harm. Yeah, because I got released. When I got released from there, I still owe a year. If I was to go back right now, I would have to do another year in the shoe program because I still owe them a year. When I got released, it was too much for me. It was too much.
Being outside.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was overwhelming because I remember I'm not seeing nobody. All of a sudden, I'm just seeing people. I'm just seeing like too many people, and it was overwhelming. And a lot of anxiety because of spending the 2 years in the hole. I feel like the last 10 years has been tough for me behind that. Psychological, just kind of what it did to me.
What do you think that? I understand you did something, and then this was, crime punishment. But do you think the system actually believes that, we are a culture in theory rooted in Judeo-Christian ethics?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and do you think that's a right expression for the system to respond to what you did, as horrible as it is? I'm not justifying what you did.
do. I'm not going to.
And if you do, tell me.
Yeah,
and
I
tell me why.
agree with the system because you had to know me then. I was off the hook. I was off. I was just. It's not only with me. It was just like you got killers in there. They'll just go in there and kill people. They have to lock them up. They need to, or else it's going to be chaos. They're not going to have control. And I take accountability for my part. I've always been accountable for my part. I don't think it was. I think it was the right thing for them to do.
You do.
Yeah.
Did you? For 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna make a point against that, and basically, it was you can sedate an animal, and I'm gonna raise the question: how's that animal created in the first place, where you have to go to these extreme measures?
Correct.
And that would be my argument. I understand and I respect your thought of, hey, that was justified. But when you're creating an environment where, it's sort of like this. I'm going to give you a counter example. Remember that commercial about, I think it might have been during Nancy Reagan's time, and it's well known and it's often quoted in different pieces of literature. But the mouse, they were trying to show that cocaine is addicting.
Correct.
And it shows the mouse, right? And so the background to that afterwards, and I don't remember the details, so please don't, but if you can go look it up and see it, I believe it was either a Canadian researcher or maybe someone at Harvard, but I think it was a Canadian, kind of looked at that and decided that the protocol for setting up that study was wrong. It was bullshit. So what he did is he created the same situation with the water and the cocaine and all that stuff, except here's what the difference was. The little mice were in a very positive, beautiful environment, in addition that there was a lot of interaction with other mice.
Correct.
And I think the outcomes were grossly different, and researchers call it with statistical significance and so forth. Essentially, you didn't create addicts, right? Because again, remember, we're going back to the idea of Emil Durkheim and suicide and what it means to have a social situation where people are coming up a certain way. And he showed that if the situation's different in the first place, you're not going to create those cocaine addicts. And so I'll argue with you that if the situation was different in the first place, you don't create somebody that you have to put away for 2 years just to tame and sedate him. Now, the other argument someone might be watching this is saying, well, it's his responsibility, he did it. And we can go back and forth on this, and I don't have time to really get into this issue about accountability and responsibility. It's not one or the other. Absolutely not. This is what a politician does to sell something and give you a whole bunch of horse shit. It's not one or the other. You will always have a segment of society, a small segment, that will act out in ways that are absolutely inappropriate, no matter what situation you put them in. Okay?
Could I add something to that?
Yeah, please go
I
ahead.
like what you said there. So if I could change it, if it was me in charge of all that, I would. I think they need. They call it CDC R rehabilitation.
CDC what?
R rehabilitation. That's a lie. For people like that or in the hole, I think they should be having them do some education.
Absolutely.
That's what I think would have been the difference for me. They made it worse for me because even though I put myself in that position, I feel like they wanted to make sure I suffered as far as like isolation, nobody to talk to. If a letter comes, you get a letter from your family member, it comes on a monitor. You don't get to touch the letter.
Right.
The shower comes to you,
So I'm going to stop you right there and point to you that when you can't touch a letter, that creates more loneliness in the way Durkheim explains, and it creates more, I'm going to use this as sort of our poster child of the point we're trying, suicide. It's the lack of human connection. So the lack of human connection created someone who is extremely violent in their outward disposition, and you create more isolation and displace them even further from social human contact. I don't find anything benevolent or civilized about that.
Correct. The smell, when you get a letter, the first thing you do
Absolutely.
is smell the letter. Even if it's the mailman scent, you can smell it. So you had a good point there. You're looking at this letter, but it's not even really part of you. You're not even going to get to smell it.
And interestingly, you just by accident brought up another point. As we move towards this technological society, right, most kids don't even know what a letter is. Well, this social milieu, this big crock pot of shit that we're kind of creating continue. Now, there's nothing wrong with technology on its own. Again, that's very different. And we can go down any one of these avenues, and I believe I can full-heartedly defend my position. But every single thing we're doing, although it could be used for positives, we're creating more and more social isolation and loneliness. And I believe that. And I believe that in our work environment, I believe that in our family environment, and each one feeds into the other. And I believe there's a point, and there's no conspiracy. It's for somebody to make money, right? It creates better. Again, I'll digress for a second. I remember as a young child, certain holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and these sort of religiously based holidays, everybody stayed at home and you went to somebody's house, or it was a family event, and
Right.
you didn't go anywhere. As I started to grow up, again, all of this feeds. And if I was younger and I was going to do a PhD thesis and I wasn't a medical doctor, I'd go back and get a PhD thesis in social theory and write about this. As I grew up older, all of a sudden I started to notice certain things. People are going to the movies after dinner, the young people are. And at first when I saw people doing that, I was like, whoa, are they really going to ask people if they can leave? It's Christmas. It's Thanksgiving. This is about family, gathering, appreciation, goodness, kindness. thinking about others and each other and the value of us in each other's lives and how we perceive society. Why is he going to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre and he's not ashamed about it? So I'm a little slow. Took me a few years and a few holidays to learn that this is actually the thing to do now. And I don't know nowadays if this is what people do. You are escaping isolation. When we use the term escape, and if you look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, and its connotation and implication is you're escaping to go into the void. In reality, you are living a void, and you're using the term escape, and you want meaning.
Right.
You want human contact. And I think these are very important things that you're drawing.
Well, a lot
out.
of guys that was in there with Dr. B were losing their mind because they didn't know how to escape. They were losing their mind. They were in their head too much, and they were never the same. A lot of good guys that I knew years later have never been the same.
Traumatic, huh?
Yeah.
Dave, this is fantastic, and we're going on into a wonderful story here as well. But I think the insight into all of it is what's really important. It's such a great story. We are going to break this up into 3 episodes and maybe even 4, because I think it's just important for everyone to know your story. And hopefully, as I build my own thesis about what all of this means and what we can do eventually to solve it all, which your own particular story does a great job as a call to action for each individual and every human being and our society as a whole, I think. So we're going to follow this up with another sort of an episode with David here. To start the story from the beginning, please click on the link over here to my left. In addition, please subscribe and ring the bell to our channel. We're going to have a lot of stories like this, and hopefully we can all gain something out of it. Thank you for joining Dr. B's show, and I will see you next time.